Hello and welcome back to the velvet tones of a Salisbury and Sweetnam sports podcast. To say it's been a long time would be an understatement, but it is with great joy that I am able to welcome a star of the radio world and my podcast partner, James Sweetnam.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. As always, very appreciated. Adam's referring, of course, to my work experience on Salford City Radio. Thoroughly enjoying it, working on the Sports Zone show on a Tuesday night, 94.4 FM between 7 and 8. So, if you can listen to that, do. If not, I'll stick it on the channel and you can listen to it that way. As for Adam, he spent a bit of time abroad in the world of Sri Lanka. It's always been a dream of his to watch the cricket out there. So, Adam, tell us a bit about your trip.
Absolutely, it's been a dream for me to watch England overseas, and I fulfilled that dream earlier in the month of November. I went to Sri Lanka, I went to Colombo for 3 nights and Kandy for 4, and saw what was a wonderful test match of hard-hitting test match cricket, and long live test match cricket. Yeah, a fantastic time. Plenty of alcohol drunk, plenty of hot dogs eaten, and a wonderful time had.
Yeah, how did you find the people out there? Friendly?
Absolutely, yeah. Really friendly. It's huge for tourism of the country of Sri Lanka, which is a quite poor, religious country that us Brits go over there and spend our hard-earned cash to keep the coffers going in Sri Lanka.
So for those looking for a holiday abroad, would Sri Lanka be a place that you would recommend to them?
I suppose it depends where you go. Kandy is more inland, so it's you've got like cattle roaming the streets alone without much owner. And but if you go to like your Gauls, and that's lovely. You've got beautiful beaches on the south of the island, and Colombo is extremely westernised. So to say, is it a family holiday destination? Potentially not, but it's a wonderful place.
Is it a bit striking at first glance when you wake up in the morning, look out of your hotel window and spot a cow roaming around the streets?
Yeah, it is a bit concerning, but you tend to get used to it when you're there for a week or so.
Right. Last one on Sri Lanka. Of course, it's a place that's renowned for its wildlife, the likes of the Sri Lankan sloth bear and the Sri Lankan Horn Bill. Now, did you spot any of those creatures out there?
I saw a few hornbills, and in fact, my room at the apartment was called the Hornbill room, which is fantastic.
Tremendous, yeah.
A fantastic image of a hornbill.
Could you describe a hornbill to anybody that's not seen it before?
A hornbill, and hornbill you have to say in it's really Lancastrian accent.
Yeah, emphasising the horn.
Hornbill. Hornbill has a pointy beak, in effect.
Right. That's a really, really good analogy.
It's just literally a bird.
Right, thank you for that. Right, moving on to the world of the boxing. And I suppose the main reason why we've made sure that we do a podcast today, it's an emotional one next weekend. It's the biggest one that I think we've ever been remotely attached to, the biggest fight that we may ever cover on this podcast. It's the heavyweight championship of the world. It's out in LA. It's the big hitting American Deontay Wilder versus our hero Tyson Fury. Give us a quick overview, Adam.
Well, if you cast your mind back to last year, Tyson Fury was morbidly obese. If you cast your mind back to 3 years ago, he was lifting plenty of heavyweight titles of the world out in Germany after schooling the 10-year champ Vladimir Klitschko. This is a question of whether Tyson Fury can replicate the form of that he's shown in his previous performance, which was 3 years ago against a man who loves to punch and loves to punch hard. So if Tyson Fury can not get hit, like in many boxing matches, if he doesn't get hit and just literally picks off Deontay Wilder, it should be a relatively simple night. But this bloke likes to knock people out, unbeaten, and has stopped a hell of a lot of men.
Yeah, we're not beating around the bush there. Deontay Wilder potentially is the biggest puncher we've ever seen. We've had the likes of the Mike Tysons and the George Foremans, but in terms of explosiveness, Deontay Wilder could well be on another level. and we know that Tyson, despite those incredible skills that he possesses in his movement, it's electrifying that he can actually move around like that at 6'9". He's always going to be one away. So Adam, how does Tyson go about keeping Deontay Wilder at bay?
Ultimately, Tyson Fury uses his reach advantage and keeps Deontay Wilder at arm's length. Ultimately, Wilder will throw rash shots whether he's on top of the fight or not. So Fury just needs to be patient, wait for that ridiculous swing from Wilder, and just literally pick him off, jab his head off all night long. I can't see a stoppage, to be quite frank, but it's not out of the question. This is heavyweight boxing. But for me, Tyson Fury, if he replicates his old form, like I said previously, it's a simple night.
Right. Going to move on to a bit more of a touchy subject here. Tyson Fury went on the Joe Rogan podcast a few weeks back, and he talked a bit about his depression, his battle with suicidal thoughts. Adam, I know you watched the podcast. What were your thoughts?
I did, and I'm not huge into UFC or MMA, but Joe Rogan was a wonderful podcast host, I must admit. The first time I've encountered the podcast, and I did really enjoy it. Look, Tyson Fury spoke immensely, beautifully about his troubles, and it was a podcast that hopefully the world can relate to. Because Tyson Fury has had a lot of unnecessary flack over the years, didn't get as much credit as he possibly should have done after that Klitschko win. So for me, Tyson Fury is an absolute inspiration to the masses, and the fact that he's got into this fight with Wilder is a victory in itself. And if he is to win, it will be one of the greatest sporting achievements of my lifetime.
Tyson talks regularly, of course, about his mental health battles, and he says that he's had many sportsmen talk to him over social media and in person about their battles. We know how talented he is in the squared circle, but do you think being a mental health ambassador is his true calling card?
I think so, yeah. Look, Tyson Fury has always said that he needs to have an end goal. He needs light at the end of the tunnel. And for him to be representing those with mental health problems, and for him to have a title shot, is that end goal for Tyson Fury. So yeah, it's absolutely integral in his life.
Right, we're going back a few weeks here, but did you see Deontay Wilder knocking out a mascot?
No, a mascot in what sport? Boxing?
Google this for Adam. Of course, you at home won't be able to see this, but Deontay Wilder goes up against a mascot on, like those Good Morning America programs.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever seen Anthony Joshua went on, and I believe it was Graham Norton, and they get him punching bags and stuff to see how much power he can generate. They had Deontay Wilder punching a mascot. There he is. Now, yeah. Deontay looking at a man who looks like, I don't know, an Italian. It's an Italian man with a moustache, the mascot.
Imagine a rip-off Al Capone working for a Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
A delivery service.
Effectively, that's about as close as we can get description-wise. But anyway, yeah, Deontay Wilder breaks the man's jaw and claims that he didn't realise that there was a person in there. So my question to you, Adam, is what on earth did Deontay think was in that suit?
That's a good question. But ultimately, if the show is going to do that and put a heavyweight boxer in, I think they've got to be liable for somebody getting a broken jaw. If they're going to challenge a heavyweight to punch something, it's likely he's going to punch it relatively hard. And therefore, I personally don't think Wilder's done anything wrong.
Right, fair enough. So, last one on the fight. You can go first and then I'll go. Adam, we're going to be staying up all night for this one. It's going to be an emotional night. Whether Fury wins or loses, how do you see the fight going? What's your official prediction?
Is it too soon for Tyson Fury? Yes. Is it beyond the realms that he schools Deontay Wilder? No. For me, this isn't just a normal fighter having a layoff and coming back. This is Tyson Fury, the king of trash talk, the psychological edge, which for me, if he'll be in Wilder's head come fight night, I think Tyson Fury is going to do it, yeah. And that's a hesitant prediction.
I remember when this fight was first announced on that night in August the 18th, when he beat Francesco Pianetta. And honestly, I was reluctant for the fight. I was thinking, this is far too soon. In the build-up, Tyson, he just has that way of convincing you that he's going to do it. I am praying that he can keep Deontay Wilder at arm's length. I really am. If Deontay Wilder hits him once, just once, it could be over. He's got that sort of game-changing power. I really hope that the class difference is just too large, so this weight differential that Tyson had to lose won't come into effect, and he'll just be too many levels above. Am I wishful thinking? Yeah, potentially. But I am praying Tyson does this. And for a man who's done so much for mental health, we really are behind him. And from the bottom of our hearts, come on, Tyson Fury, we believe you can do this.
So what is your official prediction?
It's coming from a place of bias, but Tyson Fury wins on points.
Lovely.
Right, okay. Moving on to another big fight that went down just a few weeks ago at the Manchester Arena. I was in attendance and it was a raucous atmosphere. Alexander Usyk, the cruiserweight king, took on the UK's Tony Bellew, and it was a thrilling contest.
It was. I was in mid-air at the time, travelling from Oman to Colombo. But I've watched highlights back. I saw a remarkably hefty knockout, which draws a close on Tony Bellew's boxing career.
Yep. Alexander Usyk looked absolutely sensational. Bellew had success early on. I thought the sort of fighters that have given Usyk problems are the likes of Hunter and Bradis, who move around a bit. So when the likes of Gassiev stand in front of him, they seem to be made for Usyk. So I thought Bellew could give him some problems, and he did. But ultimately, the class came through. Usyk wins. He's going to move up to heavyweight now. Can he give the likes of your Joshua's, your Wilders, your Furies problems?
So of course he can. This is an extremely talented fighter. One of the pound for pound best. Will the size difference come into play? Potentially, yeah. But ultimately, I think he's got all the tools actually to dominate heavyweight division.
Yeah, okay, so Tony Bellew, the career's come to an end. We can debate all day long about how good, incredible his career was, etc., etc. But Tony Bellew has left a legacy in the sport. And do you think he shows that despite not being the most athletically talented man in the world, hard work can reach all sorts of levels?
He's a shining example, is Tony Bellew, of using the most out of your talent. You wouldn't look at Tony Bellew and think, wow, he's the most stylish and most talented boxer out there. But what he is a fighter who will never say die, often written off the critics. Against the odds, has won some huge fights. Extremely well managed. So yeah, he has left a legacy.
Yep. Tony Bellew, I mean, of course, written off so many times, but when he looks back on his career, he won a world title at Goodison Park. He's headlined 4 pay-per-views. He beat a heavyweight champion twice on pay-per-view. He's got a lot to look back on and be extremely proud. And deep down, he's a very good family man. So we wish Tony Bellew all the best moving forward. And hopefully we see him back as a pundit on Sky Sports. Moving on to the undercard, one of our favourites, Anthony Crolla, was back in action. He defeated Dowd Jordan in a world title eliminator. That puts him in prime position to fight Vasily Lomachenko. Adam, first things first, before we actually look at the fight, this shows just how big Anthony Crolla's balls are that he's willing to take on who most people see as the pound-for-pound best.
Yeah, Lomachenko is the pound-for-pound best. Obviously, never been defeated at professional and had a hell of a lot of amateur fights, and it's believed was only defeated once. He was robbed, supposedly. Yeah, huge minerals are to be taken in this fight.
Yep. But we know how good Lomachenko is. Would you rather see Crolla directed a different route, maybe the IBF title? I know Commey is fighting for that. Maybe a fight against him?
Absolutely. Although it is the money fight out there for Anthony Crolla. And if he is to do it, it's a huge, huge reward for him to beat who many believe is the pound-for-pound best. So it puts him right up in that circle.
Scotland's Ricky Burns, the Rickster, was back to winning ways. He got a crushing knockout of Scotty Cardle. 2 questions here. Should Scotty Cardle call it a day? And can Ricky Burns have one last run at a world title?
I think Ricky Burns' world title days are over. But he's a wonderful man, a wonderful boxer, had a wonderful career. So I wish Ricky Burns all the best.
Last one on the Usyk Bellew card one of our favourites again, Dave Allen, the White Rhino. He had a difficult contest against Argentina's Ariel Bracamonte, but now he seems to be taking the sport a little bit more seriously. I know he's training with Adam Booth down in London, and thank God we finally get to see Dave Allen taking the sport seriously.
Absolutely, yeah. He's got a wonderful personality, Dave Allen, and he's handy enough with the gloves on hand as well. So yeah, it's great to see. I believe it was a slugfest. I've not actually watched the fight, but it was a tough night at the office for Dave Allen, which he has come through. In the past, he has lost close slugfests, so it's good to see him winning.
Yeah. 2 huge fights announced for 2019. Firstly, at the AT&T Stadium in Texas, 80,000 will be in attendance for Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence. On paper, an excellent contest. 2 of the very best pound for pounders in the world. But for me, Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence are just 2 completely different weight classes. Errol's a huge welterweight. Mikey Garcia is just a lightweight. Do you think Mikey can bridge that gap, or would you rather see them fighting the best in their own weight classes?
It's 2 titans of the sport. Like you said, 2 of the pound for pound best in the world. So for me, it's a wonderful fight. But yeah, I'd also go with Errol Spence. I think he has an air of quality about him, although he is an extremely tough, probably the best division in boxing at the moment. Huge fights to be had in that division. So for me, he comes through this fight and then has a very, very tasty fight against Crawford.
Yep. Then it's Manny Pacquiao versus Adrian the Problem Browne. You've got one of the most controversial characters in the world, in the sporting world, really, in Adrian, a very disliked fellow. He's taking on Manny Pacquiao, the legend, the 8-weight world champion. Have you got any interest in this fight, or do you think these 2 are a little bit past it?
I think they are probably past it, although Pacquiao was scintillating last time out, rolled back the ears beautifully. I think they probably are past it, yeah. I think Pac-Man still wants one more go at Mayweather, doesn't he, really?
He does, yeah. He's fighting Sorry, I've forgotten to write this down. But he's fighting a kickboxer in Japan. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, it's a massive joke. He looks like an Oriental Kane Larkin, the bloke who stepped in the ring.
Yep. Accurate description.
And if you cast your mind back to a Kane Larkin, no disrespect, but he's a homosexual who was going out with a Spaniard twice his age.
Yep, that's true. He was going out with a Spaniard called Ricky and used to post bizarre videos on Facebook. So that's Kane Larkin.
And Twitter as well.
And Twitter, well, I didn't have Twitter at the time, at the Kane Larkin time.
He went viral. He was performing fellatio on all sorts of my news feeds.
Yeah, very controversial. I'm quite glad, now that you've mentioned that I didn't have Twitter at the time, and I didn't come across that content.
Fair enough. Each to their own.
Yeah, but moving away from homosexuals, back onto the fight itself. Mayweather, yeah, you know what it is. He's making a lot of money at exhibitions. I believe he claimed that he wasn't going to do the fight because the Japanese had ruined him to a certain extent, that he hadn't actually agreed to what was going on, which is potentially possible. I mean, I know the Japanese involved in the project are the same men that ran Pride in the MMA world, and they were extremely controversial and quite dishonest in business. So maybe that's true. Or maybe they wanted a kickboxing match and Mayweather watched the kids' highlights. Either way, moving into the world of Oceania, covering a fight and previewing a fight. Lucas Browne was back in action against the cousin of David Tua, Junior Pati. It was a bit of a scrappy fight, but Lucas showed once again that he does have that jaw-shattering power as he won in the 5th round with a big uppercut. Some say that a loss can define you, but Lucas Browne has come back. He's put in an extreme amount of work to trim up that body, and it's good to see him taking the sport seriously again.
Absolutely, yeah. Lucas Browne looks in superb. What's the word I'm looking for? I know it's
condition.
No. It's the word. It's aesthetically pleasing on the eye. Aesthetic. I've always struggled to say that word. So if I haven't pronounced it to your standards, I do apologise, but I'm going to say aesthetically pleasing on the eye.
Yeah, I imagine everybody's livid with your pronunciation of the word aesthetically.
I'm livid at your pronunciation of the word pronunciation. But anyway, moving on. A wonderful win for Lucas Browne. Can he have a little climb to the top once more?
Well, you know I love Lucas, but I don't think Father Time waits for any man. I think Lucas is getting into that stage now. But that's not to say that he can't get a couple of wins out in the Southern Hemisphere. The likes of Alex Leapai, Solomon Hamono, people like that. That's who I'd like to see Lucas in with. And he deserves a couple of paydays because things just went wrong for him after his world title victory. And I hope that he can secure himself and his family. I really do. Anyway, a big one. Jeff Horn versus Anthony Mundine.
Horn. Again, Horn.
Horn. And that will only make sense if you listen to the intro. But yeah, Jeff Horn, the man from Brisbane, is fighting in the Suncorp Stadium, which hosts 50,000 people. For the second time in just 4 fights, he takes on the legendary Anthony Mundine from around those parts. It's a case of younger versus older. Adam, do you tend to back the younger man in these contests?
Age always tells in combat sport, so yes.
Yep. Jeff Horn, a man who, of course, was bullied at school. Adam, does this show that you can come from a tough background, you can get picked on, but you can turn it all around with a bit of desire?
Sweetnam absolutely loves people who have been bullied at school. I
love a narrative.
He's made up the story that Simon Whitlock, the Australian heartthrob Aerosmith, was bullied at school as well. No, of course it's a wonderful story. It's a bit like X Factor when they go on and say, I was bullied at school, and always get further than they should do. But to be fair, in combat sport, you can't necessarily do that because ultimately you only get 4 if you win.
Yep. Last one. Australia's never been a hotbed for boxing, but Jeff Horn has sold out a stadium twice now, and it's fantastic to see boxing finally breaching over there.
Oh, superb, yeah. There's nothing I'd love more than a trip over the pond, not to America, to Australia, to watch cricket and boxing. A lovely combination. That'd be fantastic, actually.
Oh, it'd be a brilliant one. It really would. Anyway, DAZN, the American network, have signed Canelo, and it's a huge statement if they want to take over the sport, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yeah. A drugs cheat. Fantastic.
Or outright drugs cheat, we're not disputing that. But Canelo Alvarez is also the biggest money maker in the world.
Yeah, in all seriousness, he is one of the figureheads of the sport. So yeah, well done to DAZN.
Michael Hunter, little unknown about just a few months ago. Of course, he was the man who gave Usyk his hardest test, aside from Mary's Bradis. But he's had a couple of back-to-back wins, firstly at York Hall against Martin Bakole, then last night in Monaco against Alexander Ustinov. It's good to see somebody sort of come from nowhere and then make their statement live on Sky Sports.
Most definitely.
Then you've got the rematch finally confirmed, Chisora versus Whyte. 2 questions here. Firstly, it's surprised, David Haye's involved, really, because it wasn't too long ago that David Haye was smashing bottles over Derick Chisora's head.
Yes, it's a huge surprise. Although, in combat sport, you tend to have that mutual respect for each other, don't you? No matter if you absolutely despise one another. So yeah, it was a surprise, but I think it's a good move for both men.
Yep. And is the contest one you're intrigued by, or you're slightly more intrigued by Warrington versus Frampton, which takes place on the same night?
I would have been intrigued if the rematch came absolutely directly after the previous fight. I thought that was a fantastic fight, and I for one, was calling for a rematch. But now, a lot of water's passed under that bridge. Whyte is ever improving. So, I've not got as much appetite, and it's fair to say I'll only be tuning in to one fight that night, and that will be Warrington against Frampton.
Yeah, are you a bit livid at this penis-swinging contest between Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn? Would you rather they just put the contest on separate nights and didn't compete with one another?
I'd love to see that particular contest happen, actually.
I have to say that Eddie would have the bigger one, if we're being honest. Frank's an old man.
2 men swinging their penises around. 2
southern men swinging their slongs.
I'd probably argue Warren has the bigger one. I reckon
really?
I can't see Hearn packing any sort of punch.
Yeah, but Hearn's very happy-go-lucky, whereas Warren's quite bitter. He carries around the energy that he must have a small penis, or he'd just be happier in general life.
I think Frank Warren's pretty happy in life, I'll be honest.
Do you think?
He's literally going to be in the States next week watching boxing. So
yeah, watching Fury versus Wilder.
He's probably got a decent-sized penis. I reckon he did quite a lot of shagging in his early years, Frank Warren.
In his earlier years, yeah. But just the way he conducts himself in interviews, I feel like he's sort of missing out.
Yeah, by the way, he conducts himself in interviews. He has to have a small penis.
Yeah,
Right.
exact science. Anyway, last couple of things in the world of boxing. The World Boxing Super Series, there's just been too many fights to do each one by one. But do you just feel the tournament's been drastically let down by a lack of TV coverage in this country?
It's ridiculous, isn't it? We should all be having a penis swinging contest with regards to who gets the rights, really. Everybody should be after these rights. It's a real shame that they're not.
Yeah. Last one, Conor McGregor versus Paulie Malignaggi. They had that very controversial sparring session where a little bit of it was leaked. Apparently the full 12 rounds are going to get posted in a Netflix documentary. So, Adam, 2 questions. Firstly, do you think that it was more than likely that Paulie Malignaggi probably did get the better of those sparring sessions? Or are you just completely and utterly done with the whole thing?
I think it's on a shite. Unlikely I'll watch it. And Paulie most definitely would have won.
Yeah. Right, okay, let's move on to the world of football. The first time in a very long time. Wayne Rooney, his final appearance for England. He deserved it, didn't he?
I just can't understand people who are against it. 130 appearances now for the national team. The greatest ever goal scorer. Hit some wonderful form over in the States for Wayne Rooney. So, I can't see an argument against glorifying one of England's greatest footballers. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with you. But let's hand the baton over to the younger fellas now who are carrying this England side to a Nations League victory. They topped the group against Spain and Croatia, and it shows the side that Gareth Southgate is nurturing.
It's absolutely wonderful. As I've been extremely outspoken ever since Gareth Southgate got the job to be England manager, he is the right man to lead us to international glory. And who knows how big the Nations League will become, but I, for one, think it's an absolutely outstanding concept that UEFA have come up with. Gone are the days of monotonous friendlies where nobody gives a flying toss, but in comes real competitive football. And I, for one, think it's absolutely superb. And if we are the inaugural winners of the Nations League, then it will be a fantastic achievement for all concerned.
Yeah, there's been a lot of young players involved in the side. What do you make of Jadon Sancho?
Yeah, Jadon Sancho is he's a wonderful player. He's young, he's hungry. He left Manchester City at quite an early age to go and pursue first team football. That in itself is admirable, and he's currently tearing up the Bundesliga at Borussia Dortmund. He's actually younger than us, James, which makes you feel
that makes me feel
old.
Utterly sick.
Again, he's mixed race. It's likely he has a decent sized penis.
We need to stop talking about the penis size of all these different players. If you've tuned in just for the football section of the show, then you have no idea why Adam is talking about Sancho's penis. But I promise you there's context there. I promise you.
Yeah, there's a hint of context there. Look, yeah, he's a wonderful player, and this lad has a bright future. Although, potentially, I'm going to make a prediction now, he's going to start getting hard work. I reckon he's got
That better not be a pun.
No, it's not. I reckon he's got a massive ego.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah.
So then we move on to... Oh, no, sorry. Leicester, of course, the tragic events that took place there were a helicopter crash and it killed 5 people, including the chairman of Leicester at the time. Utterly tragic, but it was absolutely incredible to see the whole of the city, and indeed the whole footballing world, get behind a man who did so much for the club.
Yeah, the whole community getting behind a remarkable man, really. A man who allowed the dream of conquering English football to happen for a club like Leicester City. It's not to be underestimated. It was a tragic night for football in general, really. Because there's a lot of foreign owners who come over here now and don't really give a toss about their club, but Vichai would fly in every single game. A remarkably committed man, a man who ultimately played an instrumental part in an absolute footballing miracle, in my opinion. So yeah, absolutely rest in peace. And unfortunately, the world of horse racing will be poorer as well, because he owned some pretty decent horses. One off the top of my head, Come On Leicester was one of the horses that he owned. Fox Power, I think is another. They used to wear blue with a white trim in the midriff of the jockey. So yeah, rest in peace. A wonderful man.
Yeah. So obviously, as Adam said there, incredible man. Donated tons of money to Leicester Fox's foundation, the university medical department as well. Just a great man. And a shout out to the helicopter pilot who managed to steer it away from a crowd, which ultimately saved the lives of hundreds of people. Football, a sport where fans like to give each other stick, but we all come together for moments like this, and it shows the humanity in the game. Moving on to a controversial topic, Richard Scudamore. All clubs advised to pay $250,000, resulting in a total of $5 million payout for the executive of the Premier League. Utterly disgusting in my opinion. What's yours?
It's a fine example of football being created by the poor and stolen by the rich. I'm pretty sure Richard Scudamore is on a pretty healthy yearly salary, probably over £1 million a year, I'd suspect. And for a man who has campaigned for the Premier League to go over to ridiculous countries like China for games, I don't think he's ever had any sort of concept with regards to what football supporters want. And for me, for him to get a £5 million thank you and goodbye is a complete and utter disgrace.
Yeah, I utterly agree with you. You know, we talked a bit about the chairman of Leicester before, about the money that he's donated to other people. Richard Scudamore clearly not keen on doing that himself. It's just not something we're happy about. It could be donated to far better causes, but that's that. Sergio Ramos, another controversial moment of this week. He failed a drugs test before that Champions League final. Liverpool fans are going to be hitting the roof as they look for any excuse to target the Spaniard, but let's be honest, this is controversial, not only for Sergio Ramos, but also for UEFA, who covered the whole thing up.
I'll be honest, I've not seen any of this.
Really? Sergio Ramos failed a drugs test?
I've not seen any of that.
Right, so just give your opinion on... Well, I don't think there's much you need to say, just drugs testing in sport.
For a man who prides himself on his knowledge of football, that's not brilliant.
No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not indeed.
As not to be fair, my knowledge of football out of these shores has always been really poor. But no, it's obviously terrible for one of football's most successful players.
Yeah. Is his legacy somewhat tainted by this?
Is Rio Ferdinand's legacy tainted?
No, not particularly.
So no.
Right, okay. The early retirement of Chris Humphrey has been announced. I know he used to play on the wing for your beloved Preston North End. Is it a bit sad to see him go this early?
It is sad. Chris Humphrey put his all into playing for Preston North End. He used to play left wing back and was relatively effective at doing so. Has scored some really nice goals in the past. Doncaster always springs to mind. Scored one at Walsall that sent people into raptures. So yeah, all the best to Chris Humphrey. I saw him in the Fleece the other week, actually. I'm pretty sure he was drinking a pint of dark mild.
Right, tremendous.
So,
really is.
It's quite impressive, actually.
Yeah, well done to him on his alcohol choices. Anyway, keeping with the theme of Preston North End, what a day it was for you as you defeated your local rivals, Blackburn Rovers.
Yep, absolutely. Preston North End against Blackburn is a derby that's reignited in recent years. Blackburn, who are renowned for being plastics, going over to support Blackburn in 1995 when they won the Premier League from Preston. So yeah, it's a remarkable amount of plastic was around in Preston yesterday, but Blackburn came here brimming with confidence. 5,500 Rovers supporters flocked to Deepdale, believing their side were going to get all 3 points on a famous victory for their club. But ultimately that all came crashing down within 10 minutes of the game. Preston scored after 2 minutes, scored after 10 minutes. There went the tie. A wonderful win for Preston, whose season is on the up, although injuries could plague Preston.
Yeah. So anyway, the last football topic of the day, and please do not make a penis-sized joke. Usain Bolt, the ex-fastest man on the world, is moved into the world of football. He's playing out in Australia. Are you happy to see him achieving a dream he's chased for so long?
So I think it's a bit of a joke, to be honest. But if he's good enough, whatever.
Right. a tremendous way to finish the topic. Moving on to the arrow throwing. Let's kick it off with the European Championship and the World Series that have been won by a resurging James Wade. I know you had a tear in your eye as the machine picked up his first 2 majors in a very long time.
Absolutely, yeah. If you know me well, then you know that I've championed James Wade through a real tough couple of years, and to see James Wade pick up 2 majors in consecutive weeks was slightly emotional, to say the least. He rode his luck, trademark James Wade, but crashed in some tungsten delight, and I was in absolute delight, in awe of a wonderful, wonderful couple of weeks with James Wade.
Yep, we're not too far off. December 13th, the World Championship of Darts at the Ali Pali. Could this be James Wade's year?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Although, you can never write off the machine. A multiple major winner. Probably the greatest player to never have won the World Championships.
Moving on to the Grand Slam in Wolverhampton, it was Gary Anderson versus the Iceman Gerwyn Price. It was a very controversial one. The ex-rugby player Gerwyn won his first ever major tournament, and it was very, very controversial. His bravado on stage grinded the gears of the Flying Scotsman, and he baited him into a point of no return. There was a bit of pushing and shoving on stage. Before we analyse Gerwyn Price's performance, what do you make of all that? There's not really much of a place for violence on stage.
No, yeah, a remarkable amount of needle on stage. It's become apparent that Gary Anderson just wants to throw his missiles at a board, but Price likes to ruffle the feathers of his opponents and did that extremely well. Was behind, started ruffling Anderson's feathers. He started throwing darts away from the target, and Gerwyn Price hit the target and won the Grand Slam of darts. So for me, yeah, no real place for it in the sport, but needs must, really.
So, Gerwyn, of course, won the tournament. He had that nightmare Premier League year last year. Has he earned his place again for this year's tournament? And is he a dark horse in this World Championship?
I wouldn't give him much chance in the World Championship, but if he just plays consistent darts, and who knows, and we saw last year Jamie Lewis had an extremely good year, and yeah, look, anybody can have a good run. It's that simple.
Let's go to the world of WWE. We're a bit behind here, but Crown Jewel took place in Saudi Arabia. And before we dig deep into the card, was it controversial that they went out there at all with everything that was going on with the murdered journalist?
It probably was, but ultimately, a business is business. You've got to keep going.
Right. Let's talk about the main event. It was a childhood dream. The Brothers of Destruction versus D-Generation X. The Undertaker and Kane versus Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Did you have a goosebump type feeling watching those 4 Hall of Famers go at it?
Yeah, it was a wonderful occasion for men who epitomise my childhood, really, of watching sports entertainment. And it didn't disappoint.
Yeah. You had the WWE World Cup with some legendary performers. Ultimately, did it fall flat a little bit? I mean, Shane McMahon won the tournament in the end and he wasn't even competing. Were you slightly disappointed?
Yeah, it was a piss poor execution of what was a good concept, really. Realistically, they should have had legends tackling each other in the final. It just never worked out that way. It's going to be The Miz against Dolph Ziggler. But The Miz got injured and stepped in Shane O'Mac, who ultimately won.
Yeah. And that storyline continued to WWE Manchester Live, which I was happy to be a part of. I mean, I've always wanted to see it in person, and I finally did. I got to see the likes of Rey Mysterio win a match, Randy Orton come out of nowhere, land an RKO. Some big wins really for the competitors. And I know you're a man who's been to WWE in the past as well. It's tremendous to see these childhood heroes in person.
Absolutely, yeah. I've absolutely loved my time going to watch WWE. I've been twice, and on one of those occasions, I got John Cena's wristband. He actually gave it to me.
Yeah. Until you're there, I don't think you really realise just how good performers these are. And I'm not just talking in-ring, I'm talking their execution on the mic. They truly are about as talented as an athlete can get.
Absolutely, they're athletes and actors. Yeah. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, special shout out to The Miz, who's just gifted on that microphone. Anyway, moving on to Survivor Series, we had the traditional 5-on-5 tag team match. You had a SmackDown team with Samoa Joe, Jeff Hardy, Rey Mysterio, Shane McMahon, and The Miz, 5 greats of the sport, and a Raw tag team which was, not quite as high a calibre. Were you slightly disappointed in the result? I know you're a Raw fan, but would you have rather seen the Legends get the victory?
Yeah, I am a Raw man, but I can't say I watched this card, but on names, realistically, there should only be one winner. But I don't think it was as far apart as James does. I still think Raw had some pretty decent athletes on their team, but yeah, SmackDown probably should have won.
Last one, a tragic story. The Universal Champion Roman Reigns announced that he's stepping away from the sport for a brief time to battle something that so many of us have to, cancer, leukemia to be precise, and it's utterly tragic to see what he's going through.
Absolutely, yeah. We wish Roman Reigns the absolute quickest recovery possible.
Yep. Moving into the world of MMA, on Saturday night, not just Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, there's another great heavyweight clash headlining out there. Tai Tuavaisa versus Junior Dos Santos. You've got the rising Australian star versus the former world champion in JDS. It should be a good one for that Adelaide crowd, of course. Tuivasa looking to take that baton over from Mark Hunt to represent Australia. Hopefully he can do it. Junior Dos Santos, a legend of the sport. It should be a stand-up battle. Both men, excellent strikers, but I'm sure Dana White will be hoping for a win for the young Aussie. Then we talk about one of our personal favourites, Mark Hunt taking on Justin Willis. It's the last fight of his UFC contract, so he won't be competing in the big leagues again after this. We're not sure if he will retire or not. But Mark Hunt, the one-punch knockout master, the Super Samoan. Adam, will you be sad to see him step down, or with his age to be considered, are you happy to see him having one last go?
Yeah, well, I've been campaigning for Mark Hunt to hang up the gloves for, I think, his last 2 or 3 fights now. Look, he's getting a bit too old to be getting crashed in the head and other various parts of the body. So yeah, I'd like to see him retire after this fight. Hopefully he doesn't start going to like places like Bellator and fighting.
Yeah, we mentioned that Tai Tuivasa taking that baton. Australia now producing the likes of Tyson Pedro, who's going to take on Shogun Rua, and other such fighters, Rob Whittaker, of course the champion in the middleweight division. Mark Hunt throughout his career has served as a fundamental pioneer for martial arts in that part of the world, and it's superb to see a younger generation that he's inspired. Anyway, moving on to UFC 230, the heavyweights. Daniel Cormier took on Derick Lewis, who got his title shot by beating Volkov and claiming that his balls were hot in front of the world. DC, of course, was just too big a step up for him. He's at the elite level. He ragdolled Derick Lewis and submitted him inside just 2 rounds. He moves on now to take on, presumably, Brock Lesnar, who's looking significantly smaller with the steroids out of his system. If you were Brock, Adam, I know he's just signed a new deal with the WWE, would you be stepping back into the realms of UFC, or would you stick with what you know in the WWE?
I suppose it's a bit like Tyson Fury. He's not had the trouble Tyson Fury has had, but ultimately he's probably not octagon fit in terms of being in a fight. So for me, I'd probably stay in WWE. Having said that, UFC pretty decent money. But as in WWE, I'd love Brock Lesnar to be the Brock Lesnar of old in WWE. Like Here Comes the Pain and stuff like that. A real raw kid coming through the ranks. I know he's getting on a bit now, but I'd like to see the old Brock back.
Yep. Co-main, Chris Weidman versus Jacare Souza. Both men who are competing for another title shot in that middleweight division. Chris Weidman started the contest well, won the first 2 opening rounds, but it was Jacare the Crocodile Souza who ultimately won the contest with a 3rd round knockout. He works his way towards a rematch with Rob Whittaker. As for Chris Weidman, that's 3 losses out of his last 4 fights. I think he'd be better suited moving up to that light heavyweight limit. Then a revolutionary one for combat sports, the first trade in the history of the UFC. Demetrius Johnson, a man who I've complained about multiple times on this podcast for not stepping up and fighting the best, is being traded with a man called Ben Askren, who's one of the best grapplers in the whole of the world of mixed martial arts. He's been fighting in ONE FC, where the competition isn't necessarily good enough for him, so it's going to be fantastic to finally see just how good he can be. The likes of Joe Rogan, Brendan Schaal have been shouting his praises for a very long time. And I think it shows a lot, Adam, that the UFC aren't interested in a fighter such as Demetrius Johnson, who, despite all the talent in the world, doesn't want to fight the best, isn't brilliant on the mic, and doesn't sell tickets. So, does this put into perspective that your personality is potentially more important than your talent?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a bit of a shame, really, that that's the case, because ultimately you can't always be born with special talking sort of attributes. I mean, it'd be a complete nightmare for me with a speech impediment.
Yeah, you'd be in serious trouble. You really would.
I'd get heckled from one post of the octagon to the other.
Anyway, then we move on to the Bellator. I think the last podcast we did a shout out to Shiel's son, and we played Too Much Fun as our closing song. He unfortunately was defeated inside a round by the greatest heavyweight of all time, according to some people, Fedor Emelianenko. He moves on to the final to take on Ryan Bader in January. UFC 232 will be headlined by the return of Jon Jones. He takes on Alexander Gustafsson for that light heavyweight title, which is to be stripped off Daniel Cormier. It was the greatest fight in the history of the sport last time. Hopefully it can be just as good this time. Both men have been inactive, but they're two of the best, and hopefully they're going to put on a cracking show. Adam, do you think it says a lot about the UFC that they're pushing a man so hard who, despite being incredibly talented, is ultimately a drugs cheat?
Of course it's frustrating, but it's a problem that plagues the sport, I think. Like, Lesnar's a drugs cheat and they're trying to wield him back out. So yeah, it's a problem in a lot of combat sports, but more sort of prominent in UFC.
Yep. Last MMA topic of the day. Oscar De La Hoya started his Golden Boy promotion, and it was the third fight of a trilogy between Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz, two of the greatest men to ever put on the UFC gloves. But now, Tito's 43, Chuck's 48. It was utterly embarrassing. Chuck was shot, with all due respect, 8 years ago, and I think he won one of his last 7. It is hard to see somebody who was once so brilliant look so slow and ploddish and just not what they were. Adam, do you think a lot needs to be done from a medical standpoint to prevent people in their 40s, late 40s specifically, getting into an octagon, because it's just unsafe?
Yeah, like I've said, it's totally wrong. It's like power crashing in on the skull and other various parts of the body. So yeah, it's not right ultimately.
Yeah. Moving into closing, Adam, I'm not sure you've heard about this, but it's been all over the news this week. A Christian missionary went to an isolated island just off the coast of India and was attacked by the local tribes people. Have you heard about this story at all?
No.
Right, so basically, this Sentinilese tribe, that's what they're called, have been isolated for over 60,000 years.
They're old.
Well, yeah, extremely old. There's a maximum of 400 people in the tribe, completely isolated to everybody else. No other tribes can understand the language. Just
how can you get into that tribe, though?
You can't get in. It's just the people who are in the tribe are descendants of the people 60,000 years ago. Can't get in, no chance.
Right.
There's been many attempts at contacts over the years, but if you get near it, then they'll start firing bow and arrows at you.
Okay.
And even, do you remember the Indian tsunami in 2004?
Yeah, all too well.
Yeah, you were 5 years old at the time.
I was there though. I was in Goa.
Yeah, tremendous time for you. Anyway, a helicopter flew over and they actually tried to take out the helicopter. So no way in whatsoever.
Right.
Anyway, this Christian missionary attempted to go over to convert them to Jesus. He went over 3 days before his death and tried to preach the Bible to them, brought them some footballs as presents, and of course he was met with some arrows. So he paddled for his life away on a kayak before returning 3 days later via fishermen who'd illegally got him to the island, where he was ultimately shot dead.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace to him.
Mentalist.
Utter mentalist. Do you not think it was a bizarre idea to try and convert people who ultimately don't even speak English?
Yeah, when you're getting bow and arrows hurled at you, pinged at you, to go back 3 days later to try and look again, you've got to question someone's mental state.
Yeah, very bizarre. Adam, I'm going to put you in a castaway type situation here. Your plane's, it's gone down in the ocean. You've swum towards the nearest island. You've arrived at the Sentinilian tribe. a load of men come out with arrows and they're trying to attack you. How do you tackle the situation? Do you run? Or do you try and talk to them? What do you do?
I'd be trying to swim away.
Trying to swim away. Just straight back into the ocean, go.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah. I'm trying to think, if you were given the task of going out there to potentially, not become one of the tribe, but to create some peaceful communications, how would you go about doing that?
I honestly don't have a clue because you're literally getting bow and arrows hurled in your skull.
Yeah.
So it's not happening.
It's a difficult one.
You're dead.
Yeah, I feel that we've sort of experienced this in the past before. Being Kingsfolders, going into Broadgate and having the local chavs hurl stones at you. So, you know,
well, yeah.
I infiltrated into that group against, you know, I actually think probably morally these people are probably slightly nicer than the youths that hang around Broadgate.
I doubt it. They're shooting people dead.
Yeah, but they're throwing stones at you. They just don't possess the skills to create bow and arrows.
Fair enough.
So, yeah. So, Broadgate versus the Sentinilise tribe. This is the last question on this, by the way. They go to war. The Sentinilise have bows and arrows. The Broadgate
have stones.
Have stones, and potentially some of them might be on with cricket bats also. Who do you want to win?
I'd like the Sentinilise to win.
Yeah. We support the tribes people who last one.
Who are currently shooting dead British people,
yeah,
by the way.
And they can't even retrieve the body because, one, it's too dangerous, and two, if they get anywhere near the island, these people have been isolated for so long that even somebody, say, with a cold could go in and they'll all get wiped out because they have no immunity to disease. Quite an interesting story, actually, if you research it. But that's the last on the tribes people, and probably the last time we'll ever talk about tribes people on this show. I saw Darius Rucker the other week, the country singer, incredible voice. He was live at the Albert Hall. Just give him a quick shout out. One of the best gigs I've ever been to. Adam, I'm not sure if you've seen this one on This Morning. There's a woman on there who claims to have intercourse with a ghost and is now married for a ghost. Adam, do you have any belief in the sort of thing she was coming out with?
Complete and utter bollocks.
Yeah. Is she lying or is she just absolutely crazy?
She's mental.
Just a mentalist.
Yeah.
How would you tackle
it?
No, I'm not talking you in a relationship with a ghost. Let's say, I don't know, a friend of yours, or say, maybe your sister one day comes on and goes, look, Mum, I look at him, I'm in a new relationship now, I'm going out with Casper the Friendly Ghost. How would you tackle the scenario? Would you sympathise with her, or would you take her to a home?
I'd take her to a hospital.
Hospital? Okay.
Or mental asylum.
Moving forward. For those who like Southport, the new series has started. Fantastic as ever. The Stumble, my dad's band, played at the Phoenix Club. Tremendous. One of your favourite venues in the country.
Superb.
That was nice to see. As well as the Atkinson last night in Southport, and they tore the house down. Excellent performance.
Good.
A few pieces of sad news coming up now. Barbra Windsor announced she has Alzheimer's. It's a horrible disease which we've both dealt with firsthand. Have you got anything to say to Barbara or the family?
I just hope that she's peaceful in her illness.
Yeah. A few people have unfortunately passed away now. John Cunliffe, who created the characters in Postman Pat and Rosie and Jim. I used to love those shows going up. And, rest in peace, and a tremendous man.
Yeah, two of the more iconic opening tunes to cartoons.
Rosie and Jim.
Yep.
I love their boat drifting slowly across the canal. And Peter Brackley as well, the commentator in the world of football. Sad to see him go.
Yeah, terrible. A wonderful wordsmith.
And lastly, for those who live in Preston, Pemberton specific, Salvatore's one of Preston's favourite restaurants, and unfortunately Salvatore, the owner of the restaurant, has passed away. Very nice man I've met on several occasions, and just utterly tragic that he's gone just into his 50s.
Yeah, terribly sad news.
Yeah. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here is started again. I'll be honest, you're going to have to carry the bulk of this. I'm only 2 episodes in. I'm trying to catch up. Adam,
I'm only 4 episodes in.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope if you miss an episode or two because it's just a long way back.
It's carnage.
Yeah.
But Harry Redknapp is wonderful. That's what I've seen.
I always saw as soon as I saw him going in that Harry Redknapp had to be the favourite. It was always going to be a Harry Redknapp win.
I saw him at 10-1. It's a good price.
Incredible. Other members, who's in it? Who else? Noel Edmonds, nice. I liked him on Deal or No Deal, but apparently he's been causing a bit of controversy in the jungle.
Yeah, I've only seen one episode with him in, and he's the Emperor or something.
Yeah. Emily Atack, Charlotte Hinchcliffe.
She's good.
Yep, she's nice. 3 vegans and they're not happy about that. If you're not willing to eat kangaroo penis, you should not be in the jungle. Who else is in that? John Barrowman could be a dark horse for the competition.
He's fabulous.
He is. And Yeah, can't currently think of who else is in there. So that's it for now, and I'm a Celebrity. To close the show, Tyson Fury, we love you. As well as we love Mark Hunt, quick shout out to him. But yeah, big focus on the Furious One. Everything he's done for mental health, everything he's done for people who struggle with alcohol or drugs, people who struggle with weight loss. You're an inspiration, sir, and we truly hope that you can get the win this weekend. We love you, Tyson. Go on, buddy. You can do this. We believe in you.
It's time to rule the world once more. So good luck to Tyson Fury, and goodbye.
I bought a brand new Ferrari convertible in the summer of 2016. And I was in it, and I was on the highway, and there's a strip of the highway where I am, and at the bottom of about a 5-mile strip there's a massive bridge that crosses the motorway, and I knew that, and I got the car up to 190 miles an hour. I was heading towards that bridge, and I didn't care what no one was thinking. I didn't care about hurting me family, me career, people who friends, anybody. I didn't care about nothing. I just wanted to die so bad. I give up on life. And just as I was heading towards that bridge at 190 in this Ferrari, it had crushed like a Coke can, by the way, if I'd have hit it. I heard a voice.
Somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
I heard a voice say, no, don't do this, Tyson. Think about your kids. Think about your family and your little boys and girls growing up with no father. And everyone's saying your dad was a weak man. He left us. He took the easy way out because he couldn't do anything about it. And before I turned into the bridge, I pulled on the motor and I was shaking. I could feel myself shaking, and I pulled over and I was all nervous and didn't know what to do. I was frightened and I was so afraid. And I thought, that day, I'll never, ever, ever try or think about taking my own life ever again. And I didn't.